I learned something this week, that wakeboarding is harder than it looks. I see those people. I've watched the YouTube videos. They pop right up out of the water effortlessly. I hurt everywhere and never got more than an inch off the water. So for those of you that successfully get up onto the board, I need some help. Not begging to, okay, so I'm begging to go out on your boat in the river. Yeah, but anyway, but if you know how to do that, I'd love to learn. I'm telling you, my little 15-year-old nephew, first try, pop, cutting down there. He did get a little fancy and he ate it a few times, but he could do it. I was so frustrated. So if you can wakeboard, I want to learn. Please, that's just a little desire of mine. The Lord put a... Well, there you go. I thought, you know what? I was making these excuses. I'm too tall for this board. That was, but your excuse is better. I appreciate that. Thank you. I'm going to learn. You know what? I should pay attention. The pain in my body is a message. It don't mean keep trying. It means go sit down. That's what it means. Hey, that's what they make tubes for people like me, right? Just hang on. I hear you. The Lord put a message on my heart this morning. He's been messing with me all weekend until he got it just right. And he already spoke up today. Isn't it exciting to hear from the Lord in our services? Amen. Amen. Hallelujah. Praise the Lord. I had an experience about, for those of you curious, I'm going to be 37 in a few weeks. And so actually about a week and a half, I'll be 37. But I'm counting down. I decided that every year I'm just going to subtract one. And some of y'all have been doing that for years, and it's worked out fine for you. My dad always said, age is only a matter of mind. If you don't mind, then it don't matter. Amen. Hallelujah. That's it. And hair is just hair. And what's not turning gray is going to turn loose. And I might as well just get used to it. So it's all right. It's just how it is. That's just how it is. But it's okay. But my dad, years ago, was one of the better minister/golfers in the state of Georgia, and he got invited to go play all over the place. And one year he took me to California with him, and it was called Palm Desert. And so, he's like, we're going to the Palm Desert, and I'm thinking, to play golf? Turns out the Palm Desert has some of the most lush fairways and golf courses you've ever seen in your life. But where it's not fairway, it is dirt and dust and sand. And here I am, the only desert I've ever been to, and I played golf every day, stayed at a Ritz-Carlton and ate steak every night. So that was my desert experience. So to be honest with you, desert experiences really don't sound too bad to me, but I'm sure most desert experiences aren't like that. And the Lord's taking me down a road today. I want to talk about a dry place, because how many of you know sometimes you're going to have a dry place in your life, right? So every now and then you're going to go through a dry experience where the water has seemed to stop falling from heaven. It's been a while since it's rained. You remember back in April of this year when everybody's grass was thick and green, and then May showed up? And now I have a brown yard. I was so proud of my yard. I was bragging to Christine. I was looking out the window. My goodness, look at all that work I'm doing out there is paying off. The grass is and now I got weeds. Weeds will grow in the desert. I got bamboo. Yes. And the bamboo's green. Wouldn't you know it? And every now and then we'll go through those dry times. I need a volunteer. I got any students want to help me with something this morning? Do I have any brave students, any volunteers? I'm going to pick somebody. 5, 4, 3. Austin, come on up. Austin, you done help me out with one problem this morning? Because every now and then you go through a dry season. Austin, you ever tasted cinnamon? Do you like cinnamon? You like the flavor of cinnamon? If you like cinnamon, the flavor of cinnamon, it would, seem that you'd like just regular cinnamon, right? Straight cinnamon. Could you do that for me this morning? You try? I mean, it's not in the form of gum. It's not in the form of sugar. It's just straight cinnamon. And that's not even a heaping spoonful. Can you here, take that. No, you can take it. You take it in your hand. Yeah, go ahead. Just take that mouthful of cinnamon there. All at once. Go ahead and take that. Yeah, every bit of it. Just go ahead and take that. Yeah, it's just a little bit. It's just a spoonful. Now, Austin, what would one word be to describe your condition right now? All right, here you go, bro. Give it a, here you go. There you go. It's dry, isn't it, dude? Go ahead, Austin. Go ahead and get right. Give it up for Austin Fitzhugh for helping me out, man. Good job. One word was dry, and when he said it, somebody go out and check on Austin. I mean, he is going to be sick for a few minutes. That's cinnamon. Who's ever done that? Who's ever done a spoonful of cinnamon? And you never do it. It's always a prank. Somebody that's done it before is now sharing it. Somebody got me to do it a few years ago. And then I started sharing it with the students that I pastored. So now I just shared it with Austin. It immediately cakes the entire side of your mouth, your tongue. There is no moisture. And he went to talk, and cinnamon dust flies out. It sucks every bit of moisture out of your mouth. That's what cinnamon does. And all that, because usually our body does very well at producing the saliva and things that you need to keep your throat and your lips just as moist as they need to be. And that immediately saps it all up and turns your mouth into a dry place. So that's why I had the bottles of water here. Anybody need some? Nice. No, just checking. Austin just went from a normal place to a dry place when the things that he had counted on to keep his mouth watered and moist and normal, they kind of disappeared because the conditions changed and something came into his life that removed all the moisture, that removed all of the comfort, that removed what was normal. The thing you take for granted is the moisture in your mouth. And the moisture in our mouth is always making us do what? Swallow, or we'd be spitting all over everybody. Some of us do that anyway. Those of you sit in the front row, you know. But swallowing and the moisture in our mouth is a part of the process of our body. But every now and then something will come in your mouth, be it a saltine cracker or somebody playing a cruel trick with some cinnamon, and it will completely turn your mouth into a dry place, into a desert. And that's what happened with Austin. And you go to talk and you can't talk. You go to breathe, you can't breathe. You breathe in that cinnamon, you're going to be coughing for 10 minutes. It's terrible. Now, when they did it for me, they did a heaping teaspoon. I wasn't right for half an hour. It was terrible. I had cinnamon coming out of my ears. I think for 2 weeks I was coughing cinnamon out. And then you sneeze it. Oh, man. And it has this little bit of burn to it. Almost like ginger. Those of you that like the real strong ginger ale, you like that real strong ginger ale because it got a little bit of a burn to it. And that's what cinnamon does to you. And so when Austin gets back in here, we'll give him another hand. I hope he makes it back. Hope he can get mad at me and leave church. But if you've ever been to a real desert, anybody ever been to a real desert? Very little grows in a real desert. Brother Chuck talked about when he moved out to Texas, he's like, man, all those things you see on the movies is real. There goes a tumbleweed. They grow tumbleweeds in Texas. But not a whole lot of other stuff grows. And it's a lot of barren desert region. Why? Because there's not a lot of what? Not a lot of water. Not a lot of water at all. Every bit of Austin's mouth moisture was taken away. The driest place in the world, anybody know what that is? It is, oddly enough, a place that is 8,000 feet above sea level. A place called Calama, Chile, in the Atacama Desert. It's never, ever rained in this Calama, Chile. The annual precipitation, just by dew every now and then, is 5 millimeters of water. This is a elevated, 8,000 feet above sea level, but very dry place. It's a mountainous desert plateau where the river does flow through the heart of the city, but it never, ever rains. So if they're going to survive, they're going to be right next to the river because it's never going to rain in that place. And there's never been rain in the history, in the recorded history of this place. Now, can you imagine living in a place where it's never rained? I can't imagine that. We live in the South, and it could rain just about every day. But then it won't rain for a week, and then it'll rain for a whole month. I spent some years in Florida, in college. In Florida, at some point, it's going to rain just about every day. Just enough to wet everything and then turn it into a sauna. You know what I'm saying? That's kind of what happens there. Being at a place in your life when it never rains, though, is even more difficult than being at a place physically where it never rains. Have you ever been in a spiritual place where all you could do was cough out a little bit of dust? There was no moisture. Where you had once been fertile and saw life being produced and saw hope, all that was barren and it was dry. And the bad thing about where there's no water, there's no signs of life. And we need signs of life. When there's water, when there's something happening in someone's life, you can see it, you can sense it, you can feel the life, you can feel the passion. But when somebody's going through a dry spell, you can feel that too, can't you? they get a little short in their responses, don't they? They're not as loving. And we see people change before our eyes, and we just think they're mad at us. But what we need to realize is there's some deeper issues going on in somebody's life. They're dealing with things that we can't see because they're in a dry spell. There hasn't been a lot of rain. There hasn't been a lot of outpouring. In Psalm chapter 63, verse 1, I'm going to read this passage to you. He's going to put it up on the screen this morning. David is writing this while he's running for, yay, Austin Fitz, you okay? You need another bottle? You go right ahead. You deserve two. Man, you made it back in 3.5 minutes. You're doing good. Thanks for being a good sport, Austin. We haven't been talking about you at all. In Psalm chapter 63, verse 1, David wrote this while running for his life. We've been talking about David on Wednesday nights, and we're wrapping up the life of David this Wednesday. He wrote this while running from Saul and his men in the wilderness, spent a long season of his life there, and he wrote 63 verse 1. I'm reading in the New Living because I love the wording here. A psalm of David regarding a time when David was in the wilderness of Judah. O God, you are my God. I earnestly search for you. My soul thirsts for you. My whole body longs for you in this parched and weary land where there is no water. Well, obviously, we know he was physically in a wilderness. He was running for his life. He was sleeping in caves, sleeping in strongholds, watching other people's livestock that were mean to him. He was going into enemy territory. There was not a lot of stability, and he had a lot of other disgruntled people with him that joined him in this part of his life. And he writes here, he said, I'm in a dry and weary place. I love that. That he didn't just leave it on the surface. Because anytime that you're dry, you're probably also weary. Anybody ever been dry and happy? Well, I know when deodorant's keeping you dry, it's a good thing. I mean, it was there, so I said it. So you're never going to be dry spiritually and happy. Weariness follows the dryness, doesn't it? When things are bad, they just get worse. And when things are bad, it seems that people start heaping on insults. And when things are bad, it seems people get more rude. It's just how it seems to happen. One domino after another, the snowball effect, if you will, in this dry time of life. And that's what David is saying. And David breaks this down, and I love this statement. He says, I earnestly search for you. My soul thirsts for you, and my whole body longs for you in this dry or parched and weary land where there is no water. Can you imagine what it would be like to live in a place where it never rains, to have to be hiding out in a cave in a place where it never rains? And anytime you go to where there was a source of water, you'd be putting your life in risk, because that's where the army and the soldiers of your enemies are going to be patrolling. They knew where David was. Saul was pursuing the paths that he knew David took on a regular basis. So anytime David would try to go for water, would try to take care of his men, he'd be putting his life at risk, because the enemies and Saul's men would camp out around the water holes. So that David not only was running for his life, but that they would starve and get dried out. It's just like our enemy, isn't it? Our enemy likes to get between us and our source. And he does this with guilt. He does this with shame. He does this with grudges. We know where our water source is. We know we need to be at the altar, but because of the mind games he's playing with us, he encamps around it. He said, oh, don't even come and try to pray. You know who you are. You live in a lie, two-face. And he puts this barrier between you and your water source. That's what Saul would do to David, so that David's men would be parched. They'd have to break through enemy lines to get a drink of water. They did that for David. So Saul's men would stay between him and the source of water. And here he's writing about it. He said, man, I miss you. I miss you like I miss water. I'm taking some time here before we get into the real meat of this, because I want you to hear the depth and the gravity in David's cry there. He was desperate for God. He's saying, oh, Lord, I miss time in your presence. I miss when I could just be around you. I miss when I could just freely play songs without having to look over my shoulder, run for my life. I miss those days, because we've had those days. Don't you have the good days? Where the bills are paid, everything in your house works, your cars are running fine, everybody's healthy. Everything's working out fine. Those are good days. Man, why can't they last? Murphy's Law has a way of getting into just about every part of our lives, but God is over Murphy's Law. Just know that. That God could at any moment cause rain to fall. God could at any moment be this bottle of water or two back into Austin's palate to remoisten. He's probably going to be back to normal by Tuesday. It's okay. But there's a few statements in this that I want to break down for you. Put on that first statement. This is right out of that verse we just read. First, he says, I earnestly seek you or search for you. That word earnestly search, it means to get up early and look. That's what it means. To get up early before you do anything else. See, that's what I love about David. David's writing songs. He ain't just saying off the cuff, oh, Lord, I miss you. No, David's like, I'm going to get up early. I miss you to where I'm going to get up early and look for you. That word earnestly seek also means that I'm willing to break in. I'm willing to go past my comfort zone. I'm willing to cross over boundaries to find you. That's what David is saying. That's how much I miss you, that I'll get up early and I'll break into the enemy's camp if I have to get what I need. Remember that old song? Went to the enemy's camp and I took back what he stole. What does the enemy steal from you? He steals your joy. He steals your confidence. He steals your faith. He steals your hope. And you got to be earnest enough to say, you know what? I'm not going to let the enemy keep me from what God wants me to have. But yet we let him, don't we? And David's saying, I'm not. I'm going to break in. All right, this is the word picture. Let you get this. You got that window in your bedroom where the sun always finds a way in. Christina knows about it because I'll get up early most days and we got blinds on the window of the bathroom window and there's a doorway, but at just the right time, if I happen to be getting ready, the sun will come right through the crack in the blinds, right through the hinges of the door and hit her right in the face. And I'm just like, wow, that's hilarious. And I'll be like, but she don't know I'm doing that because she's still asleep. I hope she don't know. But that's what David says. David says, I'm going to break in even if it's like the sunlight breaching the darkness. I'm going to squeeze my way in to get to you, God. That's what David says. Isn't that beautiful? That's the word picture that David is painting here. The problem with the world that we live in is convenience. We don't know what it means to really need something to where we'll get up early and try to squeeze in somewhere to get it because everything is at the touch of a button. I want to record TV. I want my coffee ready when I wake up. Everything's programmable. Everything's at the touch of a button. They probably got churches somewhere where you'd have a little touch screen and you could order a coffee while the pastor's preaching and an usher would bring it right to you. Oh, I want 2 creams. Here you go, sir. And I love luxury. I was staying at a Ritz-Carlton in the desert. It was nice for one night. But the problem with the conveniences of this world and being attached to the things of this world is that you forget what it means to get up early and try to go after something. We forget what it's like to have to fight for something. What's the last thing that you actually fought for in your life, that you actually had to get adamant about and aggressive about? Probably a long time because everything's really at the touch of a button. There, you just go to Walmart and get just about anything. Everything's convenient, but convenience kills the fight in you. And David said, I'm willing to fight to get to you, Lord. We don't place enough precedence and priority on seeking God, on getting up early, on putting up a fight to get what the enemy has taken from us. Because it is a fight. We don't wrestle against flesh and blood, but there are spiritual powers and forces that you're going to face off against, and you got to push and pull and sometimes squeeze in like the sunlight squeezing through a window. And David said, if that's what I got to do, then I'm going to break in that way. To seek early means to seek while other people are doing what? Sleeping. I love that. Because David's not speaking for everybody else. He's saying, I need you. And maybe nobody else is going to get up and go after you. But I miss you that much. And I'm going to get up first. And I'm going to get up early. And I'm going to give up sleep to let you know how badly I want you. And I'm going to look for you until I find you. That blesses me. And it challenges me because I'm like, am I doing that? I mean, I get up early, but I usually get up early with an agenda. Oh, I got to get this done. And I'll take time for the word, but am I really earnestly seeking him until I find him? Because David's saying, I'm going to break in, I'm going to squeeze in, I'm going to find a way in until I get you. That's what David's saying here. The dry land is not just temporary, but it's a drought at times, a prolonged absence of water. And with this parching dryness comes a weariness that feeds on you like a parasitic organism on your body. It drains you, seeking to exhaust you in body and mind. That's why David says it's dry, it's parched, and weary, because David's not only thirsty, David's tired, but he's saying, God, I don't care how thirsty, how tired I am, I'm still going to get up early. I'm going to burn the candle at both ends until I find you. That's what David is saying right there. Well, that's only one sentence, Pat. Yeah, but David knew how to write, and he knew how to pack a punch in his writing. The next thing that he says after I earnestly seek you is that my soul thirsts for you. My soul thirsts for you. The soul being my inner being. My inner being thirsts, to be thirsty, to desire eagerly. Now you know the story about David in the cave dreaming about the well of Bethlehem. We know that story. I've talked about it recently on Wednesday nights. Because David grew up around, where did he grow up? Bethlehem. Oh, yeah, David grew up around that well. You got that favorite drink or that favorite dessert or that favorite item that your parents used to make? And you see it or you smell it, and it's like some of y'all doing it right now. Y'all drooling. Go ahead and fix that. There's this cake or this pie that my dad taught me to make. I can make it now, but even when I begin mixing it in the bowl, I can already taste it. It's already in my mouth, and I'm just like, it's just the perfect kind. And you know what it is. Whether it be like a root beer float, some of you like the RC and the moon pies, it's just a tradition. Whatever your favorite thing is, this David is sitting here, he's salivating over something that he says, and now he's writing from this cave, he's saying, man, God, you were like my favorite drink. The mouth of my soul is watering just thinking about you. What am I going to do about it? Do you love God that much? Are you thirsty for God? Does your spirit salivate over getting back into the presence of God? I don't mean to be too visual, but that's what David's saying. God, you make my mouth water. I'm so thirsty for you. I'm so thirsty for you. To be thirsty. And you would think that being in a desert would make you thirsty. But we find ourselves in a desert full of distractions at times. Because even when we are in a desert experience, the enemy's doing his best to keep our mind on other things, isn't he? Even when things are going bad, he will throw a little insult on top of the injury to keep us busy, to keep us stressed out, to keep us worried. And God's just like, man, I'm just waiting for you to focus on me. We talked about it on Wednesday night. Yeah, God let David's kingdom be taken from him. Yeah, Absalom came in and rebelled. Yeah, he did. And none of that happened without God's allowing it to happen. Not that God caused it or God sent it, but God allowed it. And whatever you're facing, God is allowing it. Go ahead and register that. Because nothing's going to get to you that God doesn't allow. Even if it seems overwhelming and it's like a desert experience, God is allowing those things. Satan went to Job and said, if you let me mess with Job, Satan went to God and asked permission to mess with Job. And God said, yes, but only to a certain point. And Satan went to hacking and gave Job a time and took everything from him except his life. There's going to be times where you're going to face things that seem to be taking everything from you except your life. And you're going to be dry and you're going to be thirsty. And God's like, I just want to make sure that you love me and want me more than all this stuff. God had anointed David king. God knew where David was going. God already knew what David's kingdom and his future and destiny were going to be like, because God created those things. But before he was ready to allow David to walk into those, he wanted to test David and put him through an experience and make him thirsty to see what he wanted more, God or stuff. Was he worried more about God's presence in his life or the crown and the robe? And God may allow you to go into a desert experience to see what you're salivating for. Man, I miss that car I had to give up. Oh, man, I miss that house I used to have. I miss those things I had to give up. I'm mad at you, God, because you took all of my favorite things. Well, what if he's trying to make him your favorite thing and you're missing it? David went from watching sheep to being one of Saul's armor bearers and living in Saul's shadow and having the best of the weapons and living in the palace and being able to come and go as he pleased and had people singing songs about him. He had a day in the sunshine. But then God took all that thing and put him running for his life out in the wilderness to see if God was still the main thing in his life. And God may put you through the desert to see what you're thirsty for. When you got nothing, what do you dream about? What are you thinking about? What are you worried about when you have nothing? David's not just saying, my soul is thirsty. David is saying, my soul thirst is for you. Let that be a new part of your life, your soul thirst. That is what your soul craves. When you are hurting, when you're lonely, what are you crying out for? And that is your soul thirst. What does your soul thirst for in your life? What do you ache for? What do you hurt for? What does your body ache for? What is your body longing for? God provides not only the spiritual strength for your soul, but He's also the source for your body. And this is the next statement that David says. Go ahead and put that next one up there. My whole body longs for you. And this is amazing. This is amazing. I love it when David says the best for last. David wrote this message. I'm just telling y'all about it. He said, my whole body longs for you. But it means so much more than that. This is what he's saying, that my flesh is changing colors. My flesh is changing colors because of how thirsty I am. Because of how dry it is out here. That my flesh is turning pale. It's turning green from doing without. But he's not asking or longing for water, is he? He says, my whole body longs for you, God. So as thirsty, as dry, as full of cinnamon, coughing out dust as David might be, he's not saying, oh, if I could just have some water. In fact, he writes in Psalm 42, verse 1, he says, as the deer pants for the water, so my soul longs after not the water, after you. And David's saying, yeah, God, I'm in a desert. It's dry. It's dry. We're shedding out here. It's so dry. My hair's falling out. It's so dry. I'm turning pale green. And David wasn't the color we are. David was a nice, deep olive. He was a Jew. He said, God, I'm turning pale and green out here. But I'm not worried about the water. I'm not worried about my body. My body is still longing for you. That's what's amazing. His very metabolism is starting to shut down and turn on his body. And he's saying, God, I still just want you. I'm not worried about water. If you want to take this flesh, you take this flesh. I'm still going to make this body cry out for you. And that's what David is saying. David says, I'm changing colors. I'm drying out with you. Throughout their days in the wilderness following Moses, what did God use for influence over them? Water. Whenever they ran out of water, they started complaining. God, there's no water. Start complaining about Moses. Start complaining about Aaron. And, oh, why can't we just go back to Egypt where there was plenty of? Well, yeah, because God put them in Goshen where there was water. That's why they kept longing for Egypt, because Goshen was this fertile little place in Egypt that God specifically put his children during that time. And God got them out of there. He took them from their comfort zone and got them out in the wilderness to see what they really liked the most. And when push came to shove, they weren't crying out for God. They were crying out for water. And so he would bring water out of a rock. He would cause it to rain and fill up the trenches that he made them dig. He brought water out of a rock again. He cut a tree down and put it into the water to make it sweet so they could drink it. Now we know God has power over water because he causes it to stand up and Jesus can walk on it. It even flows out of Jesus' side when he's pierced. So God has the ability to move and do with whatever he wants to with water, doesn't he? We understand that. So if we're going through a dry season spiritually, and God is the very source, then it would seem to say that he's still in control over it. So why are we worrying and complaining about other things when we need to be focusing on him? And Brother Donnie, if I want some ribs, I'm not going to go bang on Hardee's front door, am I? Not at all. If I want some cash, I ain't going to go bang on the hospital door. Lord knows that. They don't give money out of the hospital. But they'll take it. That's what I've heard. Then you go to the bank ATM, or you go to your knees if you need some cash. So when you need a touch from the Lord and you're in a dry place, then why would you go anywhere else or talk to anybody else except God? When you know he holds the very key to your blessing. He holds the faucet that turns the rain on and off into your life. Amen? He wanted to test his people. He would let the water get scarce and they would begin to cry out against him and beg to go back into their past oppression. And some of you have been there before. Things have gotten tough and dry while serving God. I understand that. And some of you being like, well, why don't I just call it quits? I'll go back to who I used to be. Yeah, I guarantee you there's probably some nice, moist, enjoyable days back in your past life apart from God, because you're not a threat to Satan. He's not going to mess with you. When you're not living for the Lord, you're not a threat to Satan. So absolutely, he's going to do his best to keep you comfortable. And in serving God, not every day is going to be a sunny day, is it? There's going to be deserts, there's going to be dry times, because he really wants to know what you're thirsty for. When push comes to shove and you're in the desert and it's dry and you're weary, are you thirsty for him or are you thirsty for stuff? Is your soul crying out for something that you used to have that you had to give up? Or are you crying out for God saying, I don't care what you have for me, you're what I want? When your body's changing colors, maybe because you're sick, you know, I want to work this in, because some of you have fought cancer. My mom's cancer, she started to turn yellow. Her body was changing colors just like David's was. My mom didn't get mad at God. She said, why not me? If somebody's got to be sick, why not me, Lord? Job said, though he slay me, still I will trust him. Can I take the good and not the bad from God? No. And David said, yeah, I'm dry, I'm thirsty, I'm coughing up dust, but I'm thirsty for you. If you don't want to give me water right now, I'm fine. You're what I want. I'm seeking you, not just the aspects of knowing you. So your question is today, folks, in a dry place, do you want God or you want water? Do you want heavenly strength, heavenly hope, or earthly physical sustenance? When push comes to shove, is God more important than the things around you that keep us comfortable? And I know we're in church, so I guarantee you 100% of us, if I ask you to say it, you say, oh, we want God, but what does your life say? When times have gotten tough and dry in your life, what has your attitude shown? Have you stayed faithful and continued to worship? David, in the midst of this, was still getting up first thing in the morning to try to break through to the presence of God. If you need a breakthrough, then get up early. Change your schedule. Put God first. If you need an outpouring, then get desperate. David's body was changing colors out of the reaction to the atmosphere he was in and the lack of moisture. You may have to put yourself on a personal physical fast for you to get a breakthrough and to get rain in the spiritual realm. Let your body change colors. Maybe get a little weak in the flesh to get a little strength in the spirit. Maybe that's the time, maybe God's telling you, you might need to fast a little bit. Just a thought. In 1 Kings, this is something that God put on my heart to read to you this morning. A couple of passages here. 1 Kings chapter 17, verse 1. I'll give you a minute there. If you want to turn there with me, that's fine. While you're turning, I'll tell you this. Isaiah writes several times that in his power the Lord will dry up the oceans and he'll dry up the rivers. The prophet Nahum said that God will dry up the lakes and the rivers. It's all throughout Scripture. In his power, he will dry those things up because he can do with what he wants to with water. In 1 Kings chapter 17, verse 1, now Elijah the Tishbite, who was of the settlers of Gilead, said to Ahab, as the Lord the God of Israel lives, before whom I stand, surely there shall be neither dew nor rain these years except by my word. The word of the Lord came to him, saying, go away from here and turn eastward and hide yourself by the brook Cherith, which is east of the Jordan. And it shall be that you will drink of the brook, and I've commanded the ravens to provide for you there. So he went and did according to the word of the Lord. For he went and lived by the brook, which is east of the Jordan. And the ravens brought him bread and meat in the morning, and bread and meat in the evening, and he would drink from the brook. And it happened after a while that the brook dried up, because there was no rain in the land. You mean to tell me that the miracle that God was doing began to dry up in his life? Yeah, it says it right there in Scripture. There's going to be times where God is supernaturally sustaining you. Then there's going to be times where God is supernaturally testing you to see if you're going to stay faithful. A little bit further on in 1 Kings chapter 18, beginning in verse 41. Now Elijah said to Ahab, go up, eat and drink, for there is the sound of the roar of a heavy shower. Now, in between this time was where Elijah faced off with all these false prophets, and then he kind of danced around, and it was God versus Baal, and we know who won that. And now he's up on the top of a mountain. This is about when he's about to outrun a chariot down a mountain. That's what's about to happen in this passage. And there has been a drought, and Elijah is as thirsty as anybody is. But look what God does in this place. So Ahab went up to eat and drink, but Elijah went up to the top of Carmel, and he crouched down on the earth and put his face between his knees, and he said to his servant, "Go up now, look toward the sea." So he went up and looked and said, "There is nothing." So he said, "Go back 7 times. And it came about at the 7th time that he said, "Behold, I see a cloud as small as a man's hand coming up from the sea." And he said, "Go up and say to Ahab, prepare your chariot to go down, so that the heavy shower does not stop you." In a little while, the sky grew black with clouds and wind, and there was a heavy shower. And Ahab rode and went to Jezreel. Then the hand of the Lord was on Elijah, and he girded up his loins and outran Ahab to Jezreel. Deserts are going to happen. But the God who controls the flow of the water, who can dry up oceans, who can dry up rivers, who can dry up lakes, he can also cause a downpour, a deluge right back into your life when you need it the most. So can you, like David, still cry out in the midst of a desert, still stay faithful and say, "God, even though my body's shutting down because of how thirsty I am, you're still most important. I'm not going to get mad at you. I'm not going to stop praising just because I've had to give up a few luxuries of this life." Can you say that? If push comes to shove and God caused you to have to start doing without and tightening the belt a little bit, is he still the most important thing? Or do you start whining about stuff when things get bad? David said, "Man, I'm getting up early to break through. I'm getting up early for my breakthrough. My very soul is salivating for you. And my body is changing colors because I'm putting you first. I'm worried about nourishing my spirit before I'm worried about nourishing my body." Now that's adoration in the midst of a desert, isn't it? Can you say the same thing about how much you love the Lord? Today, are you seeking? Are you thirsty? Are you longing for him? Or are you pacified by the things of this world? Bow your heads with me.